This is kind of the teaching interlude, the little geeky teaching interlude I'd like to share with you. My background, we're from Collage Group. Collage Group is we work with about 300 brands, and we do cultural intelligence. I've been in business about 15 years. Many of you in the room are already members. We work with your insights partners principally, we look at culture principally as a function of demographics through individual demographics, but also many other intersections. And we're doing lots of cool innovation to enable really powerful audience building as well. So the topic today is how halo effects enable legacy brands. I should have written brands with a legacy, that was so much better, to win with cultural relevance. And halo effects, just as an introduction, are essentially the use of cultural specificity in marketing that not only can work really well with a target audience, but with a mainstream audience as well. This is like a brand superpower. And given the fact that we work with so many brands with a legacy, this is one of the things that we're most focused on helping them with. Now, we've talked a little bit about Gen Z already this morning. I mean, you can't go an hour without talking about Gen Z, and that stat that Luke was sharing from United was mind-blowing. 17% growth in expenditure every single year for 10 years. They are what everybody talks about. But Gen Z is so fascinating because of other things as well. One is they're an incredibly diverse population, 50% multicultural. They're also the generation with the highest percentage of identification of being LGBTQ+. But they're also changing other generations as well in all kinds of unexpected ways. One of them is that, not shown on the slide, their boomers have doubled their identification as LGBTQ+ in the last 3 or 4 years. And the other phenomenon is the kind of blowback that's happening in culture, just generally as all this cultural change happens. It's even happening within multiculturals. You see a 30% increase in conservative identification politically among multiculturals in the last several years. So culture is really, really complicated right now. We don't have a unitary culture. It's very dynamic and it's constantly changing. And the question is, what do the best brands do in this environment? So what we see the best brands doing is they're developing this capability called cultural fluency. It's the ability to use culture to efficiently and effectively connect across segments. And there are 3 key components we've identified that is characteristic of these incredible brands. Think of brands like Disney and P&G really at the forefront of this. Google Pixel is also really great at this. First of all, they're making culture a core component of their strategic approach. They understand that culture is kind of a gateway into the consumer's deepest understanding of who they are as people, not just what they want, that enables you to deepen brand loyalty and earn a connection for life. The second thing is they're leveraging data and analytics. They're not just relying on hearsay or conversation or mere representation or people kind of point of view, as important as those can be. They're using data now in ever more important ways to decipher and navigate cultural complexity. And the third thing is the topic of today, is that they use the halo effect. They're highlighting, exploiting cultural specificity, the ability to reach a particular target audience with very nuanced, culturally appreciating kinds of campaigns, but in ways that can actually work for a mainstream. These are not trade-offs. That is the principal teaching here. They're not trade-offs. All right, so for brands with a legacy, there are a couple of questions that they must answer to become culturally fluent. First of all, is your brand unknowingly eroding in resonance as these cultural transformations are taking place? Second, is a competitor sourcing share from your growth consumers? These consumers, diverse America, is the source of all of US growth, and that's critical for all brands. Do you know the untapped opportunities, especially in product and service innovation? And finally, are you efficiently optimizing media and ad spend? And beneath it all is the big question, is your brand armed with what you need to do to be culturally fluent? We're going to talk about 2 really quick case studies. One is from Subaru and one is from Band-Aid on these 2 particular questions. So first, we want to start by just framing how we'll go through the case studies. This is through an assess, understand, and act framework. So assess obviously is all about measurement. How do you measure culture? Like, this is a big question, right? So we've done all the hard work of boiling the universe. We've looked at dozens of different kind of variables of how consumers perceive brands. And we've run all kinds of models and identified the 6 that are most predictive of purchase intent and brand favorability that also reflect cultural nuance or an understanding of culture. And these are product fit, so is the product or service what I need? Relevance, is this for people like me? Memories, do I have good memories of the brand? Values, does the brand share my values? Trust, do I trust the brand? And advocacy, which is the one that is the hottest one right now for all the ones, all the members we call our clients members, talking to, is advocacy. Would the consumer, would I advocate on behalf of the brand to my friends and my family, to my group? So that's the kind of like starting framework. With this, you can then double click into all kinds of different demographic slices, audience slices, what have you, to identify where you need to deepen understanding. So then you can act with precision and effectiveness as a consequence. So I want to start by just setting up Subaru. So this is our dashboard. This is you can't read anything there, it doesn't matter. I'm going to try to make you read that. It's an eye chart, I know. But it's a little video that just displays something which we couldn't figure out how else to display. And it's basically the list of all the automotive brands that we survey. We survey 1,000 brands a year. And what you can see is Toyota is there at the top. And there's a line in the middle which you can barely see, that's the average. And you keep on scrolling down. And you get to this remarkable observation, which is that 66% or more of the automotive brands are below average on this metric, the brand cultural fluency score. That's a really challenging place to be if those are going to be your growth consumers, the ones who are changing and transforming US culture so dramatically. So I want to jump into the case study from Subaru. So this might be a little hard to see. This is a picture from one of our dashboards. And it basically shows the 6 key components of the brand cultural fluency metric. You can see there fit, relevance, trust, memories, advocacy, and values on the vertical. And then across the top, we have, in this particular case, this is what it tells the story, we have demographic segments by race and ethnicity. We have 3 Hispanic acculturation segments, Asian, Black, and white. And what's really interesting is you can see, this is a Subaru versus a competitor, which I'm not going to name, but they definitely have some red spots, right? They've got some distinct red areas versus consumers. And it's not the same across every different demographic. It varies quite a bit. But there are some patterns you can see. One is that memories versus this other brand are a little bit weak. So that's an area where they might begin to potentially improve. But the one that's most interesting for the particular conversation now is the weakness across the 2 Hispanic acculturation segments of bicultural and unacculturated Hispanics. You can see they're really generally pretty red there. The question then is, after this assessment, how do you deepen understanding? And so one thing that we know that Subaru must have done, we didn't work with them directly in this one, we are actually working on unblinding a nearly identical case study from a legacy story brand that you all know well. That'll probably come out in about a month. But there's a key insight here that they clearly activated on when I show you the execution. Hispanic people over-index on extended family friendships. So you see there, 68% of Hispanics would agree to the question, I consider members of my extended family close friends. Only 55% of white people would agree to that. And for brands with a legacy, most of these brands are brands who have been built because of the consumers they've been serving historically, which have been principally white. And so this is a big difference. And so that's an opportunity to lean into this particular phenomenon. So let's take a look at the execution that really reveals how they're going after this. This is Crosstrek Girls Trip from a couple of years ago. So great execution. And we actually do it, we also test ads, a ton of ads every single year. And in this particular case, it tested incredibly well. But notice that it tests well with everybody, right? So you see there the scores, it's from 1 to 100. There's a line there, which is the top tercile threshold, that's the one in green. If you're above that line, it means you're in the upper 1/3, right, for that given demographic. And this particular ad scored in the upper 1/3 for every single demographic. That is the power of the halo effect. This is targeting Hispanic consumers because of that extended family friendship dynamic. In this case, it was granddaughter, grandmother. But guess what? Everybody has grandparents, so we all understand this. No one is going to go, I don't get this Hispanic grandparent thing. We all have grandparents. Or grandchildren, or maybe have grandchildren. And you also see the comment there below from the Black millennial man. I like how they made it personal and relatable to whomever watches it. Everybody has a family member in their life. That's the power of the halo effect. But I want to show you one other really interesting halo effect with a little bit of a shorter setup. This is from Band-Aid, done about the same time a couple of years ago. Band-Aid is an incredibly strong brand. They just like dominate virtually their whole category, and they're always at the top of our top performing brand lists and so on for every demographic. So they don't really have to come from any kind of point of weakness. The point here is that they actually are a really great example of inclusive marketing. And let me just show you this execution. We'll talk about it. So obviously, very short, very elegant ad, obviously promoting a product that would only be of relevance to one part of the population. And how did it do, right? So let's take a look at how it did on the ad cultural fluency metric. It did generally really well, and you can see, no surprise, it scored really high for the Black population. What's also really important is it scored really high for the white population, right? This is an ad targeting people who are not white, promoting a product that white people would probably never buy. And yet it did incredibly well, especially with the younger white population. You can see that young Gen Z white woman saying, it's really amazing to see Band-Aids coming in all skin tones. Being racially available to everyone is important. The future is bright. This is another way to access the halo effect, which is not just through family connection told in culturally specific ways, but through something else called cross-cultural empathy. The sense that we get it, we have respect for other people from different kinds of backgrounds than mine, and I am going to embrace that. That is a human characteristic that we can truly leverage in this kind of context for halo effects. Sounds so good? Yeah. All right, so I want to end here with this matrix, and you can sort of think about, any campaign you might be working on, and look at it through the lens that we call the cultural fluency assessment framework. The framework has in the vertical axis strength of resonance, so it's the strength of resonance of a campaign with a particular segment or others or multiple segments. And on the horizontal axis, it has on the left-hand side one segment only, a target segment, or on the right-hand side, all segments, so the mainstream. The problem is most marketing organizations are kind of caught in a trade-off between the upper left corner and the lower right corner. The upper left corner is kind of like, well, if I do targeted advertising, it's going to be effective, but it's going to be really expensive somehow. I'm going to open the door to having to do these targeted ads for every single segment. That can't be possible. And so on the other hand, then people say, well, we don't want to take the risk of doing that, so let's make it more culturally generic so we can reach the mainstream. The problem there is that America doesn't look culturally generic anymore. It just isn't that way. And so it's being perceived by consumers as ineffective and forgettable. The opportunity is to use the halo effect to break that trade-off and create campaigns that can reach both targeted audiences where they're showing up in their media environments and be used in mainstream media environments as well to reach the entire country. If you can do that, you have broken the trade-off and you've created an extremely high ROI outcome for yourself and be able to replace some of your mainstream generic campaigns with something that's truly targeted that works for the mainstream as well. So that is the wrap up. Now we've actually sent out an email with your own brand cultural fluency quotient to everybody in the room. And I and my colleagues over there will be happy to talk to any one of you. As many of you are members already. You may not even know it because we work with your insights department, but more than happy to talk to you in breaks or what have you about your own cultural fluency quotient and how you might want to take advantage of this. If you don't get the email, you can use the QR code just to send us a note that you'd like to have a conversation. So with that, I can wrap up and turn it back to the host for a question. To move us along, I guess.
Yes, thank you.
Time for questions.
Thank you so much. He's going to be available for questions if you have lunch, though.